I mean, I think first and foremost, you need to be innovating with sBTC. Clearly, lending and borrowing is the low-hanging fruit, but I think e-commerce is also right around the corner. And I think now with fast block times and fast transaction times, that's an option. I think also with Bitcoin stable coins, huge opportunity to implement that tooling. Bitcoin DeFi is the first domino to fall in this whole blockchain Bitcoin ecosystem. And if we don't get that right, the other stuff doesn't really come. But I think real world assets on Bitcoin is a massive opportunity, and insurance products, but also, like we were talking about healthcare. Where should healthcare data be stored? Certainly in the most secure block space, storage space on Earth, in Bitcoin block space.
Welcome to the Leather Lounge, a weekly show recorded live where we explore the latest innovations in the Bitcoin ecosystem. From DeFi and dApps to digital art, we bring you in-depth conversations with developers, artists, and community leaders who are shaping the future. Whether you're here to learn about cutting-edge projects or to deepen your understanding of blockchain basics and decentralization, Leather is your go-to source for all things Bitcoin. Content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, or company. We encourage you to conduct your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions. Hello and welcome back to the Leather Lounge. I'm your host, Sean Longstreet. Today's guest is Jonathan Sadlowe, co-founder and CEO of Signal21, the premier blockchain data and intelligence platform of the Bitcoin economy. The Bitcoin and Layer 2 landscape is evolving fast, with new protocols, assets, and trends emerging every week, and staying ahead of the curve can be a challenge. That's where analytics platforms like Signal21 come in, offering real-time visibility into trends and what's happening on chain. Signal21 is helping developers, traders, and protocol teams track growth, identify trends, and make smarter decisions in a rapidly changing environment. In this conversation, Jonathan will walk us through how Signal21 works, what the latest data reveals about stacks and other leading Bitcoin L2s, and why on-chain analytics is becoming essential infrastructure. We'll also discuss Signal21's new wallet tracker feature, the proposed Stacks endowment SIP, SIP31, and where he sees the space headed next. Jonathan, welcome to the lounge.
Thanks, Sean. It's great to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, before we get into all the details, let's just start with your background. What were you doing prior to pivoting into the Bitcoin space?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in technology for 20 years, and that's been from the growth side, wherein I worked at Google Cloud on Google Cloud Platform, helping to launch TensorFlow in 2015, and a lot of the great products that we use in Google Workspace as well. And then after that, was on an early team to launch a company called Spacious, where we took restaurants that were closed for breakfast and lunch and turned it into co-working space in New York and San Francisco. And we sold that business to WeWork in 2019, just before their failed IPO. And so I've always been in kind of the technology, but both from the enterprise on down to early stage startups. And so I have a biology background in molecular, and have built some businesses in the healthcare space, a couple of which that operate today. So really kind of divide my time between finance, fintech, blockchain, and healthcare. And so, my pivot into the Bitcoin ecosystem really started in 2020 when we created Gossamer Capital. And so I had recently sold, we had sold Spacious to WeWork. That imploded. COVID hit, and I was kind of looking at, all right, what's next? And what's something that has always interested me, and that was Bitcoin. And so I had been following Bitcoin for a number of years and participated a little bit. But I think what really caught my eye was when Stacks, I guess back then Blockstack had their Reg A plus, and I thought, oh, wow, very interesting from a technology perspective. These great innovations like proof of transfer and clarity. And so I really came in from the tech perspective, and it hit me like a ton of bricks of course, this is how Bitcoin is going to scale to the masses because we have to move at internet speed. Internet money has to move at internet speed, and this is the path for it. And so I saw a great opportunity when my partner and I started Gossamer Capital to really be a leader in Bitcoin scaling investments. We called it Bitcoin innovation investments, and we focused our time running Gossamer. And so that was really the pivot that brought me into the ecosystem full time. I think at this point we've invested in more companies and stacks than any other venture fund. So we're very proud of that. And once you're in the ecosystem, it's hard not to become a builder as well.
Yep, I know that all too well. I started almost 4 years ago for like first number go up possibility of city coins. Then I got into NFTs, and then just like dove head first into like all the different communities, whether they were art based or PFP based or stacks like games based. I mean, it's been a wild ride, and I'm curious to hear about your experience over the last 4 years. Like, how has the space evolved, or maybe even how have you evolved as an investor and an advisor in specifically stacks in the last 4 years?
So it's it's a great question. I think early on, there was just Lightning and Stacks, really the only, and Rootstock and Liquid. These are kind of the OG scaling solutions that existed. And Stacks and Rootstock, I would say, are the only ones that really had like meaningful smart contract functionalities where you could start to build higher finance and more interesting applications. I think obviously with the advent of ordinals, um, runes, all of that, inscriptions, all of that jazz that happened in early, I guess it was 2023, that was a massive inflection point for the Bitcoin ecosystem. And all of a sudden, we had a huge number of Bitcoin layer twos that emerged onto the scene. Became a very different, more competitive landscape. And so I think that has, one, been a good thing for users. There's more opportunities, more ways to get in. It's good for Bitcoin because there's more ways to bring people into the Bitcoin ecosystem. I think everybody that operates today, and I know certainly of the Stacks ecosystem, people are here because of Bitcoin and our belief in its potential. And so, this has been this co- greater competitive landscape has really forced stacks to also level up with the Nakamoto upgrades, now the Satoshi upgrades, now the SIP31. And so it's made it a more competitive environment, which is always good for innovation. I think right now is, I would say this is the time that I'm most excited about stacks, given what's happened with sBTC. I think it's an absolute game changer. The speeds that we're seeing, continual performance improvements, and I think what's going to be happening with the Satoshi upgrades is just a further catalyst, as well as SIP31. That's going to put stacks on a track to success. That it's going to be really hard for other Bitcoin, layer twos to compete. Yeah, I'll pause there.
Yeah, great. Well, let me continue the stacks conversation right now. So, because a year ago, shortly around when the Leather Lounge started, block times were still like 10 plus minutes. There was no sBTC. So while there was tremendous potential, the tech wasn't quite there for prime time. And I feel like now we're ready. Now, like the stage is set, the lights are on. it's go time, and we got to jump on stage. So when you get the chance to advise other startups and founders and teams, what do you think is the most valuable insights to share, or maybe even like products that people need to be building over the next 6 to 12 months? It's too hot. It's too
I
hot in
think
here.
fire alarm going off in here. Sorry, guys.
And we're back. I was
My gosh.
trying to make it work, but it was so distracting. Well, let's go ahead and take it from the top.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. Uh, all right. Where were we? Sorry about that. Okay. We're doing a little run through on Signal 21. So, as I just shared, we have a bunch of Bitcoin layer 2 data. And so we visualize a bunch of this on our own, but mostly users come in, they build their own dashboards on the back end, and I can show you that kind of query engine. So as I mentioned, we've got Bitcoin layer 1 activity. So you can see, Bitcoin price over transactions, Bitcoin transactions relative to ordinals and runes, uh, ordinals and high level. What you're not going to get, you're not going to get down to the level of like, how many pizza ninjas are there and stuff like that. We're more of like you know, kind of like a higher level view. And then we also track applications like Alex or Stacking DAO, right, that exist. And so users can see the granular activity across these different products and the number of holders, the supply, all that kind of good stuff, the amount of STX, BTC on different protocols. That can be useful information for Bitcoin investors and Bitcoin builders. We also produce a number of research for teams. So, and track that activity. We also have our own report called the Bitcoin Economy Report that we're putting out. We have a new one coming out on Bitcoin yield. So, really excited about that. And then up here in the analyze section, we have a number of products that we're building as well. One that I'm really excited about and haven't really announced yet until today is what we're calling Alpha 21, which is our large language model that talks to our database and can actually query our database. So you can do things like, what is the circulating supply of sBTC on stacks? And this is a huge unlock because a lot of people don't know SQL and can't build these dashboards. All you need to do is talk to our AI and it can build the chart for you. So we can see that currently there's just under 5,000 sBTC on stacks. And so this is going to be a real big unlock. This is an area that we're building a lot right now. And we're continuing to ingest all sorts of great Bitcoin ecosystem data into that. We also create a Bitcoin DeFi indices, so you can see different metrics, for instance, indices, for instance, like stacks to Bitcoin, right? Everything to Bitcoin has kind of been going down. Core is another one, right? Merlin, another asset. And then we can look at even the price of certain DeFi tokens relative to stacks. How are they doing? Not so great, right? After most recent Alex attack. And so that's something. We track different Bitcoin yield opportunities. And one of the things that we're doing a lot of now is building tools for corporations that are holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet and able to track their holdings and create these different dashboards and metrics for companies. So that's something that we're doing a lot of. We also have a great product that shows developer activity. I think just a leading indicator across building activity, different Bitcoin projects. And so we track weekly commits and weekly active developers across various ecosystems. And so here's stacks, number of commits, um, and active developers. I would say lastly, we have this great wallet tracker product where you can come in and we can track the 20 largest stacks holders, for instance. And you can see, well, okay, 7 minutes ago, this one received almost 30,000 stacks from this wallet. And so you can really kind of come in, build your own lists of wallets, track your own, track whales, track, you know, whoever, right? So this is a great product that I use all the time. I really like it a lot. And just gives you kind of simple insight. I like also having all of my own wallets in one place where I can see activity. It's both a security and just an organizational feature. But yeah, when you come in, when you are a pro or premium user on Signal21, you can come in here to the custom dashboard section. So, if we take like Granite, right, which is a great product here, you can see all sorts of great information on the amount of borrowing and AE USDC that's been borrowed, and different metrics around their activity, the total debt that exists that people have taken out on the platform. So there's a ton of great insight, the amount of TVL that's been put in. So almost 10 million of USDC now on the platform. And so you can create great metrics. And what's really great about Signal21 is how simple it is to use. So if I just come up here to this transactions query, I can click the little information. You can see the query that is used to pull this information. You can run the query yourself, and then you can see the data and you can build your chart however you want. And then I can save it to a dashboard. I'll create a new one. It says, leather lounge transaction. So I've created a new dashboard. I'll come here and just type leather, and there it is. And there's our dashboard. And then you can expand it, build it, however you want to do to edit your dashboard. So it's a great system, super easy to use. We have an awesome team who's put a lot of hard work into it. And yeah, we're excited.
What are some of the more interesting, innovative use cases? Some examples of ways that you have seen customers use Signal 21?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think people use the wallet tracker and to track different activity, identify different wallets that they've seen out in the world that they want to track. Um, and so that people build dashboards of their favorite protocols and to track certain kind of key metrics, maybe daily metrics that they want to see versus quarterly metrics or kind of more macro, larger metrics. Some people like to look at mining activity, like Stacks mining activity or things like that. We have some great dashboards that have been built around that. So you can see, total number of miners. A lot of miners will actually use Stacks miners use our dashboards to understand what's the current kind of Bitcoin commitment for blocks for miners and insights like that. And so, yeah, it's a treasure trove of data that we've produced, but I think the real unlock is when people use and build charts for themselves, and which is going to get a lot easier with Alpha 21 once we're able to integrate that into the chart building feature.
Smart. Yeah. Because already you're taking Signal 21 is taking kind of complex or non intuitive data that's not, doesn't really feel accessible, but then you're making it accessible for like non technical users.
Completely. And we produce there is a ton of data that people can just go on as a unpaid free user to get a pulse on the across Bitcoin layer twos, but in particular stacks where we have a lot of intelligence built out around it. And people love to read the research. People spend a lot of time reading the monthly reports and all of that. We're starting to get a lot more TradFi users on the platform. We are going to have, if you've seen BitcoinTreasuries.net, which tracks a lot of the corporate holdings and government holdings, we're going to be launching some tables like that pretty soon. We've been ingesting that data, so that's going to be really cool, which also then brings in stock price data for a lot of those Bitcoin treasury companies that we're going to have here and some new charting platforms and things like that. So yeah, excited about that, which brings in more TradFi folks.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you about current trends. Do you want to double click on that to talk a little bit more about the companies who are putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet? Are there any other trends that you want to talk about as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bitcoin yield is kind of the key trend, and there's a number of great products, but I would say um, Stacks is incredibly well positioned with proof of transfer to be able to enable native Bitcoin yield. This is truly something unique, and but there are a number of other ways in hedge funds and others that are taking in BTC, doing different yield generation tools, strategies to deliver yield, not as kind of real yield type of a structure like an sBTC, but but so Bitcoin yield is clearly a massive trend that's going to continue, and I'm really excited for the innovation that's going to continue to come out of that. Big opportunity for the Stacks ecosystem, app builders, and then as we were kind of talking about um, Bitcoin treasury companies, this is a huge meta currently, and this is happening globally. There's a lot of companies out there that don't get love from Wall Street.
Hmm.
You isolate the Mag 7 from the rest of the S&P 500. The rest of the S&P 500 almost looks like a stable coin in terms of their performance relative to the Mag 7. And so what happens is Wall Street doesn't buy those stocks. Hedge funds don't buy those stocks because there's no volatility. And so now these companies that are in that category outside of the Mag 7, outside of the top 10, on the Russell or whatever the Bombay Stock Exchange or the London Stock Exchange, you now have a tool to bring Bitcoin onto your balance sheet, enable that volatility, strengthen your balance sheet. And people, Sailor and MicroStrategy has put that strategy in clear view for everyone. And that trend is just going berserk. I mean, I see it every day in the investment landscape and pipe deals and all this and that. And so that's gonna continue. You know how it all ends, we'll see. But
Yeah.
I think there's a path for a while.
Yeah, it certainly is. The word inflating comes to mind, as in, like, it is the bubble inflating, and who knows when it's going to pop, because it does seem like there's a tremendous amount of runway ahead. But yeah, I know that the narrative is really strong right now that the next bubble popping will be because of this trend.
It's very possible. I mean, there's no doubt that some of these companies are probably going to have to unwind positions at some point
Hmm.
because they just may have, some of them have other business models attached to their Bitcoin treasury strategy. Some are just purely Bitcoin treasury companies. So if they have trouble with their core business functionality, that could cause some type of unwinding, right? This volatility with assets like Bitcoin can be impacted by global events, the Israel-Iran war, Russia-Ukraine, etc., right? So there's a lot of volatility there in the system, but that also creates the opportunity for derivatives trading and allows stock volumes to proliferate and all of that. So I can, we believe in Bitcoin, and so we believe it will continue to increase. I think just like a gold proxy is a useful proxy, but I think there's also a world where Bitcoin becomes used as a means of exchange in a more daily path at some point. I think that's, potentially around the corner. So we'll see.
Well, let me ask you, I think at the end, if we have time, I do want to ask you more about the healthcare industry and your views on that, because it's always nice if we can take a little time to sidestep some of the specific Bitcoin things. And I love to open up the scope of the conversation. But before you set up the fire alarm with your amazing conversation, we were talking about the Stacks ecosystem. And, we're really on the precipice of this new era in Stacks because of not only the recent roadmap update. Like I said, like the tech is here. We have the fast block times, we have sBTC, we have so much more interest. Now it's time to gain traction. So, with your expertise in marketing and ecosystem growth, what's your advice to existing builders, community members, and users, and potentially even new people who have some novel new ideas, some new apps to bring to the ecosystem?
Great question. I mean, I think first and foremost, you need to be innovating with sBTC. And I think there's a huge opportunity to to create new functionality with sBTC. Clearly, lending and borrowing is the low-hanging fruit, but I think e-commerce is also right around the corner, is and something that hasn't we haven't seen. And I think now with fast block times and fast transaction times, that's an option. I think also with Bitcoin stable coins, Bitcoin related stable coins, huge opportunity to implement that tooling into different products. And so, yeah, I think stables and sBTC, big opportunity there. And then I think obviously, there's an argument you can make that like if Bitcoin DeFi is the first domino to fall in this whole blockchain Bitcoin ecosystem. And if we don't get that right, the other stuff doesn't really come. But I think real world assets on Bitcoin is a massive opportunity, and insurance products, but also, like we were talking about healthcare. Where should healthcare data be stored? Certainly in the most secure block space, storage space on Earth, in Bitcoin block space. And so unlocking innovations around that, I'm really excited about. But I think that stuff is still a little ways down the road because the DeFi opportunity is really the first area to fall. Yeah, those would be a few of the areas that I would kind of point people in.
We have a great collection of DeFi apps in Stacks, but the sky is the limit with what Stacks can accommodate. What are some of your ideas? I mean, are you getting excited by anything outside of the Stacks ecosystem and other chains happening? You mentioned real world assets, and you mentioned starting with DeFi. It's kind of like the primary road in, but maybe if you can think 6, 12, maybe 2 years down the road, what else might we see on Stacks, and what might be the game changing new application?
I think the game changer is going to be e-commerce, and we haven't seen that yet. I think the thing that's going to pull people in the short run is yield, Bitcoin yield. And I think as people come in for Bitcoin yield through sBTC, that people are going to notice Zest and Granite and Stacking DAO and these other tools to generate additional yield or lending and borrowing. I think the lending and borrowing can get really interesting with the different types of lending that can happen. So, you know, uh, mortgages or HELOCs or car loans or more verticalized lending products that
Mhm.
start to look more like the real world, not the digital kind of DeFi world. I think that's a huge opportunity. I think insurance around a lot of this stuff is really important. I mean, you look at all the attacks that happen in blockchains, right? And every chain, there needs to be better safeguards for end users. And so I think that's a huge opportunity. If you can create the security and the protections for users, I think that's a huge opportunity. It's going to bring more people in, make people feel more comfortable about allocating. And then, yeah, I think, over the next 12 months, e-commerce is really a huge opportunity. And, finding ways to integrate into e-commerce platforms with sBTC or stable coins, Bitcoin-backed stable coins, that's just a massive opportunity. So those are some of the areas that I would kind of, look at right now. And there's no reason there aren't more kind of Chrome extensions that connect to, Amazon or whatever that allow me to use sBTC, and all that happens on kind of the back end or whatever, or a Bitcoin backed stable coin. I think but I'll also say, what it's not going to be is it's not going to be meme coin mania that takes us to, Valhalla, into
Hmm.
the next level. And I'm sorry to say that, because I know it's an unpopular opinion to a lot of people in the blockchain ecosystem, but because, there's a place for it, and for community building and a lot of, kind of fun stuff like that. But I think there's just too much risk. People lose their shirt messing around with that, and then they get a bad taste in their mouth, and then they leave and don't come back. And so, um, yeah, we need to kind of mimic more of the Web 2 world, and with all the advantages that we have with the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Smart. Well, let me get your real quick thoughts on two things. What do you think is going to be happening with stablecoins in the near future? And what do you think we need from US regulation?
Yeah. So, the Genius Act just passed in the Senate, so that's fabulous. And, hats off to Senator Haggerty and Loomis and a ton of others who have been pushing really hard, excuse me, on that legislation. I think the next thing to happen is really a market structure bill that is going to give clarity to stable coins and the way they can be used. Right now, the big problem with stable coins is there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't use them anywhere except on exchanges and in DeFi and stuff like that. So there needs to be a market structure that allows people to use it in e-commerce, and I know that that's, being talked about. But so yeah, so that, I know that stuff is kind of happening. That's the stuff that I would agree that needs to happen. I think I didn't touch on AI earlier, but I think AI and Bitcoin is a massive opportunity. So I would continue people to focus there as well. I think the legislation's going to have to kind of have AI as a part of that conversation as well. I think that there's definitely going to be some challenges with the way that a lot of these models have been trained online with people's proprietary data and things like that without being paid for. That's going to be a big that's going to come to a head at some point. So, I'd like to see creators and data owners and content creators get paid for that content that they've produced to train these models to make these things that now these AR companies are able to make billions from.
All right, well, finally, let's end on healthcare. So you have that background in molecular biology. What either you can, give us more insights into your background on the healthcare industry, or maybe dive into what you're excited about right now, what the opportunities are, and what you think the near future and innovations are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I have another company called Image Assist that is a clinical photography iOS application. So, really simple application for for providers and doctors and nurses to take standardized patient photos. We use artificial intelligence for pose detection and image background removal. All this goes into EMRs. I'm so I love this space. There's a ton of opportunity to innovate in the healthcare space. If you look at software out there today, it's pretty antiquated and siloed and clunky, and there's all the problems, right, with healthcare. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And for me, it's just a place to make meaningful impact personally, to help people, help providers, help patients. And so there's, a lot of, I think that's what brings a lot of us to Bitcoin as well, is kind of almost the moral angle with it. And so, I'm really excited to merge healthcare and Bitcoin at some point. There's no reason that our healthcare records shouldn't be NFTs and travel with us easily and more in our control. I'm surprised there hasn't been a class action lawsuit against companies like Quest Diagnostics that take all of our blood samples and everything and our samples and give it to, Pfizer and all the pharmaceutical companies that make a ton of money that, none of us ever get a dime of. So
Well,
that's going to come
let
to.
me ask you about that. How could it be possible for an individual to truly own all of their data and only share it with whomever they want to?
Well, so this is going to come to, government is going to have to be kind of a part of this equation. And sad to say, um, because it's similarly with, deeds and real estate and stuff like that. When the government is involved in these types of transactions, we're going to have to that's going to be part of the equation. But I think, really simply, you could convert your healthcare records into an NFT that can be managed and maintained by you in some type of interface that goes with you. You can go and see your data. I mean, who can go and find their healthcare records right now if you wanted to see, your latest? Like, it's nearly impossible. And especially if you change jobs and then you have to change your insurance provider, and it's just a mess. And so, you know by bringing that on chain and giving that to people, and then giving people a marketplace to monetize their data, and a way for pharmaceutical companies, healthcare innovation startups, or whoever to come in and purchase that data and use it. But there's a huge opportunity there. And you know I certainly have entrepreneurial desire to activate that space.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, one of the many disruptive innovations that AI is having, and hopefully for good.
It certainly will be. I mean, we're seeing just in the clinical photography space, right? Being able to take a picture of a mole, right, and understand, is that potentially malignant or is it potentially benign? Nothing to worry about there, right? And as our models get better and better, and this is something that Image Assist is absolutely focused on and building. So diagnostic tools have to go through a whole FDA process, which is different than just documentation. So there are, barriers and things like that, but you can get through that. And so it's going to be yeah, I mean, from the visual side of things, computer vision and healthcare is a ton of opportunity. Obviously, low hanging fruit is AI and the language models with dictation and finding records and data within big systems and stuff like that. There's a lot of great companies today popping up doing that.
Wow, great insights. Well, I know we're at time. Is there anything else you want to add to the conversation before we're done?
Well, I would just say, it's a great time to be building in Bitcoin. Reach out to me. Love to talk to teams, even if you're not trying to raise capital or just want feedback, or, want to talk data, or even healthcare stuff. Shoot me a DM, and I'm always happy to chat.
Cool. Well, let's get your socials. It's J Sadlow for X, right?
Yep. Yep. Or Signal21 BTC, and then at Gossamer Cap as well.
Well, Jonathan, thanks again for sitting down and sharing your insights.
Thank you, Sean. It's been an eventful conversation. I appreciate you enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully, the fire alarm wasn't too disruptive for everyone.
Yeah, it'll definitely, for anyone listening live, it'll be disruptive in post. We're going to fix it.
Awesome.
All right. And thanks everyone for listening. Next week, we have a very big show lined up. Not going to make any announcements for time since we haven't confirmed everything, but do stay tuned. as always, Leather BTC. And let me also plug leather.io, because one of the things we touched on today was earning yield on your Bitcoin. And there are a tremendous number of great opportunities and ways that you can do that, low friction ways. So leather.io, Leather has the new mobile out as well, and they are great companions to each other. So Jonathan, thanks again for joining, and we'll be back next week. Bye-bye.